New Journal and Guide. Subscribe today.
Now we're trying to figure out what to do, and I'm reminded of a story that a former governor of ours, Jerry Blount, tells about the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee when I was in the state Senate. Ed Willie had a well-deserved reputation for being a conservative. I mean, he was stingy. Word was you couldn't get a dime out of him with a crowbar. He went to a bar shortly before an election, and you could hear the people mumbling, "Oh, that was Ed Willie. Nobody here gonna vote for him. He's too stingy. You can't get a dime out of him with a crowbar." And he turned to the bartender and said, "Bartender," he raised his beer, said, "Bartender," everybody quieted down, "when Ed Willie drinks, everybody drinks." Couldn't believe it. He set up the whole house. Everybody was celebrating. "Oh, they were celebrating. Oh, he's my man. Got my vote. Oh, Ed Willie, jolly good fella. Why are you talking bad about Ed Willie? He's all right with me." Oh, they were celebrating. He finished his beer, put a couple of dollars on the bar and said, "Bartender." Everybody quieted down and looked and said, "Bartender, when Ed Willie pays, everybody pays." I say that because about a year and a half ago, we passed an $800 billion extension of the Bush tax cuts, 2 years, $400 billion a year, and everybody was celebrating. "Oh, look what happens when we all work together. Oh, jolly good fella." Oh, and then after $800 billion, and to put that in perspective, if you add up the general fund budget of all 50 states, aggregate total, $650 billion. We passed an $800 billion tax cut. So we come back a couple of months later and start doing a budget, and people wonder, "Whoa, what happened to the Medicare? What happened to the education funds? How come we can't build any roads and bridges?" That's because we were all celebrating about these tax cuts we couldn't afford. Everybody has agreed now that we need about $4 trillion in deficit reduction to get the budget back under control. Let me tell you the easiest way to do that. Let the Bush tax cuts expire. Do nothing, let them expire. I mean, don't just do something, stand there. You get $4 trillion in deficit reduction. Simpson Bowles came up with that deficit reduction, and they had to go into Social Security and Medicare to do that. But like I said, we can do this, and there are a number of different ways of doing it. Like I said, let the tax cuts expire, $4 trillion. When they start talking about cutting Medicare and Social Security and everything else, I just ask them to use complete sentences. "We need to cut Social Security and Medicare" is not a complete sentence. The complete sentence is, "We need to cut Social Security and Medicare in order to preserve the tax cuts." That's what's going on. And so when you start listing the things in the Ryan budget, we passed out reasons to oppose it. They're cutting, repealing Medicare, savagely cutting things like WIC and other important programs. You can go through the list of everything that's in there. Remember, all of those cuts are designed to preserve the tax cuts. Now we know you talk about Medicare, we know we have a problem with health care because it's increasing faster than inflation. That is a medical problem, not a Medicare problem. You ask any corporation what's going on with their health care costs, they're going through the roof, and we need to get health care under control, and the last thing you want to do is repeal Obamacare, because that does give us some control over the health care expenses. But an alternative way of doing it is the Congressional Black Caucus budget, which finds you can either let the tax cuts expire, or you can extend the tax cuts for that portion of income under $250,000 and pay for it with closing corporate loopholes. And this dollar for dollar shows you how to do it. With that, you don't have to cut anything. You can actually add spending and job creation. And the bottom line, right on the bottom, the Congressional Black Caucus came after 10 years, $770 billion more deficit reduction than the Republican plan. So you can do it, but you can't do it and have the tax cuts first. Now, one little cute way of fixing this thing is the so-called balanced budget amendment, which I got a little pass out on that too, which is a cynical attempt to do nothing. One, it's not going to pass, and the other is, if it passed, it would not help balance the budget. In fact, it would make it impossible to ever balance the budget, and the budget would spiral out of control. The main part of it is you need a 60% vote to pass a budget that's not balanced, which includes serious deficit reduction. Deficit reduction is hard enough to pass without a 60% vote. It's hard enough to pass, but if you need 60%, it's going to be harder to pass serious deficit reduction. And now, once you need 60%, there is no limit to how irresponsible you can be. So you can pass more tax cuts. You can pass more spending. All you need is 60% to pass it. This so-called legislation will not help balance the budget, and you can go step by step. Every provision in it will actually make it harder to balance the budget. But finally, people say, well, why states balance the budget? Why can't the federal government balance the budget? First of all, states don't balance their budgets. They have a capital budget, so they borrow all the money, and so they have a capital budget. The balanced budget amendments on the federal level do not include capital budgets, cash, so you cannot borrow anything for anything. So first of all, it's not a fair comparison. Second of all, states in downturns depend on the federal government borrowing money to balance their budget. Let me give you one state, Arizona, because the chairman of the subcommittee that was considering the balanced budget amendment whined on and on about why we need a balanced budget and how great Arizona is for balancing their budget. Arizona got $6 billion in stimulus money borrowed by the federal government, $1,000 for every man, woman, and child, and then sold the state capitol and Supreme Court building. Did you hear what I said? They sold the state capitol and Supreme Court building because they needed the cash to help balance their budget. Now, I think they're buying it back. But this should not be the idea of how we deal with balancing the budget. We can do this. We just need to make the tough choices. And as Ed Willie said, rejoicing about all these tax cuts, recognize that sooner or later somebody's going to have to pay the bill. Thank you.
I bet that was an opening statement. Thank you very much.
This production has been brought to you by Image Entertainment.